Ready?
Ready.
Let's do this.
it.
Hey, I am Steve with MedellinUnfiltered, and I have a very special guest today. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Laurel Van Woerkom. And
Make you do the whole thing.
do you want to start over?
Yeah.
All right.
So just say who you are in the business, and
Cool.
nice and easy. Okay, and I will. Hey everyone, MedellinUnfiltered. I'm Steve, and I'm here with a very special guest today, Miss Laurel. Please tell everybody who you are.
Hi, I'm Laurel Van Woerkom. I'm a certified hypnotherapist and well-being coach.
Awesome. Okay, and you do hypnotherapy here. It's a pretty unique thing, and not a lot of people have knowledge of it. So I want to talk about it here. Tell people kind of what you do. As I was at one point a client, so I tried it, and I know it works. So here we are.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Steve. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me here to talk about this. I'm excited to dive in.
Very cool. Me too. All right. So actually, we'll start with how does hypnotherapy differ from like traditional talk therapy?
It's a great question. So in talk therapy, a lot of times what you're focusing on is digging into the past, understanding the whys of what it is that you've experienced in your life, right? And for people who are trying to do self-development work, this is a great starting point. But talk therapy can only take you so far, right? It's like once you understand why you are the way you are, that doesn't necessarily change how you go forward, which is where therapies such as hypnotherapy and various somatic therapies come in and can be really helpful. Somatic therapies, have a lot to do with releasing emotions from the body, and we do some of that in hypnotherapy as well. But the biggest differentiator for hypnotherapy is that you're actually going in and reprogramming the subconscious mind. So we all have these programs, patterns, habits that we've developed, right, that get us through life. And sometimes they stop working for us. And so in hypnosis, we can go in and we can change those things that we've learned in order to move forward in a new way.
Sometimes those patterns are detrimental as well. Defense mechanisms, that was the case that I had. So
Absolutely. Defense mechanisms, coping mechanisms, trauma responses,
all the above.
Limiting beliefs, yeah. So things that maybe served us at one point in time, but are no longer serving us in our life today.
I think that's a big thing that I've noticed is that the limiting beliefs, when you're doing talk therapy, it doesn't really address that. It just says, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. Don't feel that way. It's like, it's not that easy. It's like it's like saying to somebody, relax. You can't do that. It doesn't work.
I know I should relax.
I know, I want to. How do I do it?
Right, well, and sometimes too, people use talk therapy as a crutch, right? They can say, well, this is the way that I am, and this is why I am the way that I am. But it doesn't actually change their actions or their way of being going forward.
Sure. It's all based on your inner dialogue. If your inner dialogue doesn't change, your actions can't change. So
Sure.
sometimes you need to reprogram that.
Absolutely, yeah. And whether you want to call it reprogramming or reframing, that's the majority of the work that I'm doing with clients in hypnotherapy.
Nice. Okay. And as far as the benefits of doing it, it's, we've talked about a few of them, but what are some of the other benefits that you've noticed with your other clients, or maybe even with yourself when you went through it, or when you go through it?
Yeah, so hypnosis is the most effective tool that I've found for really working through major blocks or obstacles. So it's great for resolving fears and phobias. It's also fantastic for limiting beliefs and for changing habits and routines.
All of those are super important. Everybody has them, so it's best if we can change them and kind of mold them to work for us.
Yeah, and if you think about anything that you'd want to change in your life, it all comes down to one of those things.
Absolutely. All right, great. I agree with all of this. So one of the things that I've heard from people when I said that I was going through hypnotherapy is they all say, well, I don't want to get on all four and bark like a dog and all that. But that's craziness, right? I can't explain how crazy that actually is. I'm sure it happens, but
Well, the reason why people say things like that is because they've seen maybe a stage hypnotist, a stage hypnotist, or maybe someone on a boardwalk somewhere in a touristy, city. And so, sure, yes, through hypnosis, people can start to bark like dogs or quack like ducks. It does happen. I've seen it myself.
Okay, so it is a legit thing.
It is, but I want to emphasize that that is performative hypnosis, and it's not hypnotherapy, right? If you're going into a therapist's office, you would hope you're going to have a therapeutic outcome, and it's not for the therapist's own entertainment.
It'd be like your therapist making fun of you for opening up. It's not the case. It's not going to happen.
No.
Except I do have a little tick. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It really does. You don't feel anything different other than positive, what you want to feel. So don't be afraid of barking. It's a bark. Who cares? A little quack here and there never hurt anybody. So are there any risks other than maybe quacking like a duck?
So I will say, when you're looking to work with a hypnotherapist, it does help to dig into their training a little bit. It is possible to become a certified hypnotherapist over like a few days or even a few weeks. There are some programs that offer that. And in those cases, sometimes the way that they're being trained is not as extensive as it could be. So let me give an example of this.
Sure.
A lot of people are familiar with childhood regression therapy, which is a form of hypnosis.
Oh, okay.
It's actually quite common and popular here in Colombia. And while that can be helpful to help people to resolve trauma from their childhood, you have to be really careful in how you use it. Because sometimes we have things from our past that our subconscious mind has actually hidden from the conscious mind. Because maybe it was too traumatic for us to actually be able to deal with, right? And until you go through enough work in therapy, you might not be ready to dig into that. And so sometimes what can happen is a therapist can take someone into a childhood regression and they can force them into a process that they're not yet ready to go into.
Got it. Okay.
And that can open up a whole new Pandora's box of things that they then have to work through. It can re-traumatize the person.
For sure.
So these are things that you do want to be aware of when you're choosing a hypnotherapist.
Okay.
You want to work with someone who really makes it clear that your subconscious mind is in control and leading the way.
Absolutely. And how do you mitigate that trauma from coming through, or if it's going to, knowing if the person's going to have that, how do you usually mitigate that?
Yeah, so in every session with a client, we start by talking about what we're going to be working on, right? It's a little bit of digging into what might be the root causes of this thing, understanding how it affects them in their day-to-day life. And so that gives me enough background information to start to understand, maybe there's something here, maybe there isn't. But either way, the language that I'm using throughout the entire session, and especially when the person is in hypnosis, is all around, trusting the subconscious mind to guide the way, to not show you anything that you're not yet ready to see or to be aware of. And so that's extremely empowering to my client because they understand that while I'm guiding a process, they're actually the one who's going through it. In control at the end. In control, exactly. Okay. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, you don't feel like when it's weird. I don't remember the specifics of being hypnotized, but I do remember the feeling of it. I didn't forget things, but I don't remember. I mean, it's strange. It's weird. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. We will, for sure. That's actually a good thing. Will I be conscious for my session is something that people have asked me. Were you awake? Yes and no. It's, I guess the best way to describe it is like that feeling right before you go to sleep where you're still there, but you're kind of drifting off to sleep. It's kind of that feeling, but it's a short window when you're about to fall asleep, but this is just an extended version of that.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it feels like. It's other than that, if you feel something's bad, you can end it yourself. You can be like, that's too much, too far. Nope, don't want to do that. But the more information that you give in advance as a patient, the better. I sent you like a book before. Felt kind of bad.
Which is fantastic. No, it's great. It's great to have that background info.
It was so much that I had to actually make it into a PDF and send it to her. Yeah.
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, so let me talk to what you were just sharing a little bit.
What's the state I'll be in kind of thing?
Yeah, so hypnosis is a natural state that everyone goes into every single night as they fall asleep and every single morning as they come out of sleep. So what Steve just described is exactly that, right? We're just replicating that natural state, and you're basically going into that in-between state of consciousness between waking and sleeping consciousness. So there are different levels of that, right? Sometimes when you're in a really light state of hypnosis, the conscious mind is very much aware of everything that's happening. Sometimes when you get into a very deep state of hypnosis, the conscious mind kind of checks out and it becomes less aware of what's happening. But you can trust that your subconscious still knows exactly what's going on. And sometimes someone will be very conscious throughout the entire session, but then as they come out of hypnosis, it'll kind of start to leave the conscious mind. But it's retained by the subconscious mind.
I would say your conscious mind kind of leaves it checks out completely about 50 to 60% into the session.
So that's your experience?
That's my experience, yeah.
I would say it's different for
Everybody's
everyone.
different. I could see that. Actually, it varied from session to session, too.
Yeah.
So the first time I was out quick, and that was that. I don't remember a lot. I remember feeling good afterwards.
Yeah, that's typically the case. We call that the hypno high.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. It's not something that maybe it's an addiction. I don't know. Maybe. But it is a good feeling. You feel very relaxed, refreshed. It's the best. That's the best part is kind of how you feel afterwards. You feel like, yeah, I could take on the world right now. I think I actually sent you messages like that. I mean, I feel great.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was my second or third ever hypnosis session. I walked out of there and I felt like I was walking on clouds.
It's pretty true. I was skeptical about how much it would affect me. I thought, oh, maybe it'll be good for reprogramming and stuff, but it definitely hits hard. So it's a good thing. It's a very good. I can't explain how good it felt. The other thing is you mentioned this is a natural state. So one of the bigger things that I could maybe see people having an issue with would be maybe religious connotations with it. Is that something that you've had to deal with? People saying, oh, well, this is black magic or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what they would say. I'm not religious. So.
Yeah, I haven't encountered that yet. But I could see it maybe being a question for people who, are concerned about trying anything that might not align with their religious beliefs. And so in response to that, I would just say that, it is a natural state. We all actually go in and out of trance states throughout each day. If you've ever been to a yoga class, if you've ever meditated, if you've ever learned, you've actually been in a state of hypnosis. So I would say no. If anything, it brings clarity in your life. In fact, I even feel oftentimes that in hypnosis, I'm closer to God. And you're closer to your internal connection with the higher power, your intuition. It really helps people to find answers and clarity in things that have been blocking them in their life.
It's kind of the yin and yang of like, and this is going to lose a lot of people, but ayahuasca. It's you're awake for it, but it's the same. It feels like you're tapping into the same part of your mind. It feels that way.
Absolutely, and I'm actually glad that you brought that up because
I love ayahuasca.
Yeah, so I remember one of my first experiences with hypnosis. the woman kept saying, you know, it's going to be kind of like an ayahuasca ceremony. You're going to kind of feel like you're doing plant medicine. And I thought, how is that possible? What is she talking about? How could this be like psychedelics? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, she took me into hypnosis, and I was like, whoa, like, oh my God, it was. It really, truly was.
You don't have the visions or anything like that you do from ayahuasca.
Some people do, though.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't. I should ask you if that's the case. I didn't. But I mean, I could see that.
Yeah, it just depends. It depends on the person. Mm-hmm. It depends on the type of hypnosis that you're doing. But for some people, it can be as vivid as a plant medicine experience. Well, keep working with it.
Yes, it's true.
But I will say, you know, one thing that I recommend to people is if you're interested in trying plant medicine such as ayahuasca, but maybe you have fears or you're not sure if you're ready yet, I recommend doing hypnosis first. Because the difference is you are going to access those same states within your mind, those same pathways, but with hypnosis, you can always come out of it, right? With plant medicine, sometimes people go into it unprepared, and they get pushed into their process, and it can actually re-traumatize people.
It's not good. The first time that I did ayahuasca, it was an incredible experience. It actually made me quit my job because I realized that, oh, this is to my detriment. Yeah. And I had a shaman there, so it made a big difference. Having somebody like you to guide somebody through it is doing like hypnosis, the hypnosis on YouTube. Oh my God, why would you do that to yourself? I've seen them now, and I'm like, oh, that's not going to work on me. Good luck.
That's a whole other topic that we can dig into too as well.
For sure. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I mean, those. It is a good question. So, you know, recorded hypnosis sessions or videos, they can be useful to some extent. The thing is, though, they're very general.
Yeah.
So they may or may not work for you, right? Whereas when you're working with a hypnotherapist one-on-one, they're going to tailor their language to speak best to you and whatever it is that you're working through. So it's much more impactful.
Very true. And I mean, and maybe if you have your hypnotherapist record a session for you after you've done it, that's probably going to be helpful because they know, like, how to get somebody into hypnosis and what it takes. I mean, you could probably do it over the phone if you had to for me, because you know what it works.
Absolutely.
I don't want to do that though. She's very calming in person. It's great. So, how you said earlier that, like, somebody can be a hypnotherapist in a weekend, can get certified. How long have you been practicing?
So I've actually been practicing hypnosis for 4 years now.
Oh, okay.
But when I first started, I didn't actually know that it was hypnosis. I was offering past life regression sessions. Okay. I was trained in that, but that alone, that's one type of hypnosis.
Got it.
So in 2023, I spent an entire year. I did a 12-month intensive training studying hypnosis, NLP, and EFT.
Fantastic.
And I started practicing it 6 months into the program. So I've been doing it for about a year and a half now.
Okay. That's awesome. So you had the pass with the past life regression, which is, I mean, kind of the same path, so to speak, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, like, you know, when I was doing past life regressions, I was effectively doing hypnotherapy, but having actually studied hypnosis more in depth, I now make those sessions more effective. Because I understand the language patterns, you know, the ways, the different types of hypnosis, what works for different people.
Sure.
And so rather than before when it was more me reading a script, which is very common with past life regression work, now I'm actually speaking to my clients directly.
It's probably better. You probably have a better connection with them that way.
Absolutely.
So what works for me won't work for everybody else. So et cetera.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do you know what's the cues that people typically give when they go into hypnosis? I wondered from what is it like from the other side?
Yeah. So, you know, there are things that we look for. For instance, I seek to understand how my clients interact with the world around them. Are they visual? Are they kinesthetic? Are they audio-digital? Right? What are
Makes
their
sense.
dominant senses for perceiving the world? I also need to know whether they respond best to direct or indirect suggestions. I want to have an understanding of their relationship to authority, right? Do they need a softer touch, or are they someone who like really needs you to command them? Some people need that. And just understanding, what kind of language people respond to, how they see the world, how they, what are their beliefs about the world? These are all things that are really useful.
Awesome. Okay. Where was I in the more softer side or the more direct side? I don't know.
You're somewhere in between.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I am anti-authoritarian to a point. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and you're also a very easygoing person.
Yeah.
So, in fact, like the fact that you're in between those two makes you fairly suggestible, which means that hypnosis worked really easily for you.
And it did, and it worked great. So that nice. We kind of talked about it before, but what can somebody expect after the first session? What's the feeling is one thing, but what can they do after they're done? Like after when they leave to kind of keep that feeling going?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say the lasting effects of a session are different for everyone.
That makes sense.
So everyone's going to feel a little bit different coming out of it. But I always recommend that when you leave a session, you give yourself some space, some quiet, some peace, right? Drink some water.
Yes.
Take a rest if possible. I know that's not always an option for people, but when possible, that's great. And then try not to think too much about it, right? So our conscious rational minds, especially for those of us who like seek to understand everything, we want to know exactly what's going on in the world around us. They want to understand the process. They want to understand what just happened. What did I get from it? Has anything shifted? Has anything changed, right? And actually, sometimes the conscious mind can unravel the therapy by being too, digging in too much to like what just happened.
Kind of overanalyzing. I know I have a problem with overthinking things. So, but it's the way I felt afterwards is you just kind of want to sit there and you don't really want to do anything. You just kind of want to just be in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty fun. And drink a lot of water. That's cannot stress that enough.
Yeah, and the reality is our subconscious minds are running programs in the background for us all the time, right? Even the fact that we can breathe without having to consciously think about every single breath that we take is a great example of how our subconscious is always kind of pulling the strings without the conscious mind necessarily being aware of it. And so when you leave a session of hypnotherapy, the same thing is happening. Your subconscious is still in the background working through everything that you got from it, whether your conscious mind is aware of it or not.
Makes sense.
Sometimes people will see immediate results after one session. Other times, people won't really notice until a little bit later, or things might just start to kind of shift and change in their life without, it being super obvious. Sometimes someone will come in to work on one thing, and then they'll start to see results in a completely different area of their life, and they might not have even realized that those two things were related.
They're connected. It's very true. Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. What are some of the topics that you typically can help people with in hypnotherapy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's so much that can be worked through, but some of the ones that I see commonly are people come in for physical ailments where they've seen medical doctors, different kinds of specialists, but they still are holding some sort of pain. So we can work on the psychosomatic origins of pain in hypnotherapy. A lot of people come in for smoking cessation, smoking, vaping, smoking marijuana, tobacco. Let's see, I have a lot of people come in to improve their relationships, right? I also work with people who are transitioning careers Maybe they're having some crisis of confidence, or they feel that their habits are standing in their way, or there's some sort of self-doubt that's holding them back. A big thing is, when it comes to trying something new, we often get in our own way, right? We get scared of the unknown. And so that's a huge thing that we can work through in hypnosis as well, is how do we work through those, emotional blocks, the ways in which we keep ourselves small. And let's see what else. I mean, there's so many things.
How you interact with other people, relationships.
Yeah.
That was where I went.
Yes. Yeah, and relationships, romantic, personal, professional, it's all intertwined, really.
That was kind of what you had said was true, that when I came in initially, it was I didn't want to be in a romantic relationship at all. I could be open about that. But it not only, when I went in, it didn't only address that, but it also addressed being social with people and getting out more and just being more kind of not in my own way of talking to people. So I just walk up to people and talk, and it's like, okay, great. And in business, it helped a lot. So, yeah, it is true that you do address a lot of different things and that you may not even know were issues. So
yeah. People come in with a symptom often, and my job is to figure out what is the root beyond that, right? What is the root cause of this symptom? And when you're working on a root cause versus a symptom, you find that it starts to unlock a lot of different things in your life, right? Another one that a lot of people come to me for is dopamine addiction or screen addiction. That's a really big one these days.
Except for when you're watching this video. But it is a big thing. It's I see it in kids. You can see it at like 3-4 years old. The mom or dad just doesn't want to deal with them, shoves a phone in their face, and off they go. And now they're quiet, and that's starting it. It's so scary for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to get caught up in that,
Sure.
unfortunately, right? I'm guilty of it as well. I find myself working, and sometimes when I'm working, I'll notice that I keep checking my phone to see if I've received any messages.
I mean, I have to turn my phone on Do Not Disturb when I'm trying to focus on something. So
yeah,
and that sucks. I hate doing that. So it's a good thing if you feel like you're addicted to Instagram and doom scrolling to address that.
Yeah, hypnotherapy is great for any addiction, actually.
I can't see a talk therapist being very good at resolving that. After a talk therapy session, you kind of feel like, what the hell just happened? What did I do? The only thing that you really feel is like your bank account got smaller.
Oh.
After the first few, I mean, I don't want to piss off therapists, so. But it doesn't. I didn't notice anything right away. You have to go a lot to have an effect with that. But hypnotherapy, you feel it like maybe not the first time, like you said, but you will feel difference if you're open to it.
Yeah. So, from my own experience, I will say there have been times in my life where talk therapy has been very useful, very helpful. For instance, in a period of grief.
Of course.
And the reality is, like, our minds like to ask and understand why.
Sure.
We want to know the root cause of things, right? That's the curiosity of the cognitive mind.
Sure. What can I do to avoid that in the future, kind of thing?
Exactly. How can I gather information about this so that I don't replicate this process going forward? And so talk therapy is really great for that.
Sure.
But if you actually want to create change, right, that comes from reprogramming, rewiring, shifting the actual mechanism that is repeating that pattern. And that's something that you can do in hypnotherapy in a matter of 1 to 5 sessions. And
it changes your internal narrative. So if you're like I was, where you have that narrative that says, don't do that, it's going to fail. It's not going to be good. It's going to be bad. Don't do it. It does get rid of that kind of that voice, that feeling of not doing something or doing something, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. You're changing the associations or the stories.
Sure. It's very true, very accurate. Can everybody be hypnotized, do you think? Or
Yes.
okay.
So a lot of people ask, or they'll say, like, I don't really think I can be hypnotized. And the truth is that everyone can. As I mentioned, it's a natural state that we all access every single day. And so that proves that it is accessible to everyone. It's just about knowing how different people go into hypnosis, like we talked about before. And so, that's why when I work with someone, my first session is all about running some tests, talking to them, analyzing them a little bit to figure out how they best go into hypnosis.
And I mean, even before we sat down and had coffee before even going into it, so you had a good idea as to what, you read me pretty well. You got me pretty well. So that's a big part of it. And what is, like in my case, I had no idea, which I'm sure a lot of people don't. How can people prepare to go to a session?
Yeah, so what I recommend is that people come to a session well hydrated, if possible.
Again, it's important.
If you have a little bit of time beforehand, even if it's just 5 minutes, take a few moments to breathe or to meditate or just come into stillness, right? Turn your phone off, become present.
Especially if you have a screen addiction.
Especially if you have a screen addiction. And I ask that people come to sessions sober. So, I mean, I have, nothing against marijuana, alcohol within healthy usages, as we've talked about psychedelics for, therapeutic uses as well. So I won't tell you your business, but I will say that these substances can inhibit the hypnotic process. So it's important not to use them before a session.
I can imagine coming high to a session. Let me do some coke before a session. Jesus Christ. The worst idea. This isn't working.
I think marijuana is the most common one because some people smoke daily. But yeah, it can really inhibit the process.
If somebody does do drugs that smokes weed daily, is that something that they can work through with hypnosis?
Yeah, I've helped many clients to end their relationship with marijuana.
I think from the people that I know that do it daily, it's to find calm. They're not calm without it, so they can find a calm, some stillness without it. I think that would be a helpful thing. So.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing with any addiction, right? Is we use substances to cope.
Yeah.
They're an easy path to access the states that we haven't yet learned to access within us. But the truth is, that's just a practice of understanding what are the natural mechanisms that I can use to find more peace, find more calm, find more focus, whatever it might be. And so when I'm working with clients on ending substance use, we're also working on those other tools too, understanding what they can replace it with, as well as reprogramming the associations.
And at the end of the day, any drug that you use is just altering your mind chemistry, your brain chemistry, dopamine, and if you can find a way to regulate that on your own, even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, we can say this with certainty, this isn't a magic bullet for everything, right?
No, it's not. So sometimes people come in and they say basically, fix me. Can you fix me?
No, absolutely not.
Can you just do your voodoo magic and make me better, right? And I think a lot of people expect a lot of therapies to serve this role for them. And so if you've done any amount of self-development work, you likely know that doesn't exist, unfortunately.
It's not going to happen. As much as it would be great, it's not realistic.
No, I mean, hypnosis, like any tool, is a tool and it's a practice. So when clients come with me, they'll likely get homework after most of their sessions. There are things that I expect them to do in the meantime in order to reinforce the good work that we've done. And ultimately, I am just a guide. I'm not a magician. And so when someone comes to work with me, I'm guiding them through a process, but they're the one who's actually doing the work.
It's true. The magician part, I don't know. He might be. What would you, the final thing here, what would you say to anybody that's kind of hesitant to try hypnotherapy? They're curious, but they're a little bit nervous about it. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say, just know that you're in control throughout the entire process. So when you go into hypnosis, your conscious mind will still be present, right? And if I were to suggest anything that really didn't align with your highest values or morals, your conscious mind would immediately pipe up and be like, nope, okay, taking me out of here. All of a sudden we're no longer in a trance state. That doesn't compute. I'm not taking that in. So just know that, there's nothing that I can suggest to you that I'm not a mind controller, basically.
Darn it.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Maybe.
No,
I think that's too much power.
Yeah, you don't want that.
I don't want that. I don't want that responsibility.
It's too much.
No,
Cool.
but my sessions are all about empowering you to create the change that you want to see in your life.
Awesome. Yeah, that is the best way to be. And how can people find you?
Yeah, so you can visit my website. It's livewellwithlaurel.com. That's Laurel, like Laureles.
The coolest neighborhood in the world, apparently. Which we're not in.
Or you can find me on Instagram. It's @_love.laurel.
I'll put it all down below too. So put it down there. All right. Well, how long are you going to be here in Medellin for?
Yeah, so
you travel quite a bit.
Medellin's a bit of a base for me. I do travel, but I'm here quite often. So this time around, I'll be here probably until at least mid-April, if not the end of May.
Okay, very cool. You get plenty of time. And you do group sessions too. You definitely want to mention those. That's a good way for people to kind of slowly get into answer any questions about hypnosis. Might be a good way for people to do that.
Yeah, it's a good point of entry if you're curious about hypnosis, but you're not sure yet if you want to do a private session. I do offer group hypnosis events. I've always got events happening, some focused on group hypnosis, some focused on self-hypnosis. I'm also offering authentic relating and other various groups. So
awesome.
If you're curious about joining an event, you can always reach out.
And I would. Don't think too much about it. Just do it. It's good for everybody. I think it would maybe not everybody. I don't want to paint with that brush, but I think it would be a good thing for people that are maybe feel stuck to do. Might be a good thing for you. So definitely try it out. And she's very nice. She's very calm. Very calming presence, so it's good.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, well, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. All right, see you guys. That was easy. See?
That's great.
It was almost 40 minutes, too.